Welcome back. Tonight, I want to talk to you about a very important issue, suicide. A recent study reveals that the suicide rate in the United States has soared to its highest level in 3 decades. The overall suicide rate has increased by 24% since 1999. There was a 43% increase among men ages 54 to 64. The overall highest suicide rate in the U.S. remains among men over the age of 75. Suicide rates among middle-aged women rose by 63%. But the most drastic increase was among young girls, ages 10 to 14, whose suicide rates have risen 200% since 1999. To make sense of all this, if there is such a thing that one can do, and to understand why this is happening and what can be done, is psychotherapist Dr. Lisa Palmer. She's joining us from Florida. Also with us is senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, Diana Fergaroth. I'll say that sooner or later, right? Sorry, Diana. And former NYPD detective investigator Tom Ruskin is here with me in the studio. All right, seeing the fact that I totally botched your name, Diana, I'm going to give you, first of all, how do you say your last name?
It's Ferch-Gott-Roth. 3 syllables, just like Obama. Diana Ferch-Gott-Roth.
All right, I am going to call you Diana if you don't mind. Diana, let me ask you a question. What is driving this incredible increase in suicides?
One problem is that we have a lack of jobs and slow economic growth. And it's this group of middle-aged men and women, 45 to 54, and they cannot see any way out. And it really should be a wake-up call for us to do something about our economic situation. We're closing down coal mines in Appalachia. We're asking states to reduce power plants and manufacturing through EPA regulations. We are telling the Department of Labor to enforce regulations and develop new regulations that fall to a greater extent on small businesses. And it's these people between 45 and about 60 that don't see their way to the next job. They're too young for retirement, and oftentimes they think that they're too old for retraining.
You know, I'll buy into that to a certain degree, because right now, the United States of America has the highest number of people out of the workforce than has ever been before. In fact, I think right now we're over 92 million people who are out of the workforce. And so President Barack Hussein Obama tries to tout his 5% national unemployment rate, but the fact of the matter is that it doesn't take into account all the people who stopped looking for work. So, Doctor, I want to go over to you because, I mean, you know, these sort of topics, suicide, drugs, I'm always very passionate about this. So what can you offer people right now watching at home? What is the #1 sign for somebody who is becoming suicidal?
Depression is huge, and it's something that we don't talk often about, but it is the 8th leading cause of death. There's actually 19 million people in the United States suffering from depression, and I think that that's a big culprit, as well as our broken mental health system. So people really are not getting the type of health care that they need, and therefore they're self-medicating, and you know, it's causing a lot of problems.
You know, you talked about self-medicating, Tom, right? You know, President Obama, I mean, I'm going to blame everything on him, not only because it's easy, but because it's true, right. All right? You know, in his 8 years, over 90%, I think it's 98% of all wage growth has gone to the top 1%. Now, I just came back from San Francisco. The amount of homeless people that are laying all over, I mean, it's not like in a little tiny tent city. It was right outside my Hilton hotel. I actually had to step over a guy. You go here in New York City, you can't go a block without seeing young people, old people, black, white, female, male, laying all over the street. I mean, ultimately, this sends people into a
Dennis, if you were going to ask for money, Dennis, if you wanted to ask for money, you would lie outside a rich hotel too. You wouldn't go up to Harlem and lie there because no one would give you money.
All right,
so
Diana,
I'll come. Diana, they want you to give them money.
Diana, I'll come back to you in a minute. Okay, all right.
But I just want to make sure that people knew it was logical that they stayed there.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second, Diana.
All this is
hold on, Dr. Palmer. Dr. Palmer, let me finish my question to Tom. When we look at all the things that have happened bad under Obama, the drugs. Right now, the drug epidemic in this country, when it comes to heroin and to painkillers, at an all-time high. How much of that do you think adds to this overall suicide rate?
I think it not only suicide, but, death by drug as well. So when you're talking about drugs in America, the drug epidemic and mixed drugs, pills, as well as heroin has gone through the roof. I mean, the heroin nowadays, when I was on the street as a narcotics detective in New York City, was not that potent, 50, 60% pure. Now it's 85 to 100%, 85 to 98% pure. So when they're sniffing it now, at the time they had to shoot it when I was on the street, now they can sniff it. They're dying by those drugs. And it's leading to homelessness, it's leading to depression, and eventually sometimes suicide. But I will also attribute suicide nowadays to social media. Because when you lose your job, and it's out there in the media, you're more embarrassed than you were 20 years ago when I was a child by the stigma that your friends now know that you're not doing well. You can't travel. Your social status in this country has become very entwined with social media, Twitter, and other forms of it getting out there. And I think to the doctor's point, which was a very good point, this is what's affecting the growth in suicides in this country.
Absolutely. I'm going to go back to the doctor right now. Doctor, I mean, one of the things I read out here was the fact that young girls between 10 and 14 years old, I have two young girls that fit right around that age. That disturbs me big time. That has to be driven by social media, is it not? I mean, is Tom right?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of our discussion here today is about sociological factors that are contributing to depression and therefore in some cases leading up to suicide. But I'm going to kind of take it a step further and talk about hopelessness in our society, because I think that before anybody commits suicide, they're really feeling hopeless. And again, I go back to the broken mental health system. I go back to the lack of good mental health care and just people not really feeling like they're getting what they're needing. So they're losing faith in the doctors, they're losing faith in themselves, and they really don't feel like they can reclaim themselves.
Diana, I'm going to let you dive into what you were saying about the homeless people that are standing outside in San Francisco and everywhere else. Are you claiming the fact that they're purposely laying on the ground because they want me to give them $5?
No, I'm not saying. I'm saying that if you have to choose a place to lay on the ground to get sympathetic people to give you money, you are more likely to choose to lay outside a nice hotel than to lay somewhere where people like you are not likely to pass and see them. But homelessness is a terrible thing. And to go back to what the doctor was saying, there is a mental health reason for this. We emptied out our mental health institutions, and this is the result. And I think it is also fundamentally, when we see this uptick in suicides, fundamentally an economic reason. And it's interesting, it's happening in the United States. It's not happening in any other country. In the United States, we have also seen the labor force participation rate declining, as opposed to in the United Kingdom, for example, where it went up again after the recession.
Doctor, Doctor, you want to jump in?
People give people hope.
Yeah, she actually raises a very good point, because what she's actually referring to is our sociological and our cultural perceptions of what it means to be in good health and how to cure ourselves of these problems like depression. And I think that there is a fundamental problem where I go back to the broken mental health system with regard to how to cure ourselves of these problems and how to reclaim ourselves in our lives. And that's definitely something that we need to look further into.
To both their points. First, Obama's healthcare system has been a failure to people with depression. More people are killing themselves now because they can't get proper medical help, or they don't have proper insurance. Forget about Obamacare.
Look at the veterans.
Right. Look at the veterans and look at how we're not caring for them properly. And a lot of them with PSD are coming back from war and they're not getting proper help. As a cop, homeless sleep has nothing to do with suicide or otherwise. Homeless sleep more in private little areas because they don't want to be bothered, because they don't want to be robbed and they don't want to be a victim of crime. So, Diane's point, it makes no bearing to me. Yes, If they want to make a little more money, they may go to the Intercontinental or Nob Hill and collect a fefew more dollars, but then they're going to go to their box or their warm area or their safe area outside of the well-known metropolitan area.
You know, I sometimes I share personal stories. I didn't plan to do this. I will say this now. When I was a teenager, my parents divorced, and it was traumatic for me. It was horrible, and I was at the point where I was going to take my own life. And my stepfather at the time was a cop, a detective, sort of like yourself. He was able to pick off that something wasn't right with me. And I remember walking out of the school. I was actually going to go to another schoolyard and take my life. And one of the teachers saw me. Thank God she saw me. And that time I come back and I think about what has been said on this panel. I felt like I had absolutely nobody to talk to, nobody who understood. I only have 20 seconds for each one of you, so you got to be quick. What do you do if you got somebody who you think is suicidal?
Well, as a cop, you want to take them to a medical facility. As a friend of theirs, you want to seek help, and you want to make sure that nothing happens to the person and let them know that you're there for them.
Diana, 15 seconds.
You want to refer them to a professional. There are professionals who are trained in this, and this is something where you need to get them there as soon as possible and persuade them to see a professional.
Doctor, last 15 seconds to you.
Again, see a professional. You know, there's actually a lot of people that have suicidal ideation, but they don't have a plan. And it's up to a professional to make that distinction between what is suicidal ideation and what is actually a plan. So I would definitely take them to a professional to have them evaluated.
Thank you, Doctor. I thank all three of you. It was a great discussion about a very disturbing topic. What do you guys think? Send me an email.